Greetings and welcome back to room 303 in our Talks with Walt, as we are calling our readings through the deathbed edition of Walt Whitman's Leaves of Grass. We turn now to a little poem, Virginia the West. Notice a dash between Virginia and the word the. This is poem number 7 of the 43 of Drum Taps. And this is a significant little poem because this is one of the few moments in Leaves of Grass when Whitman becomes, I'm going to say obvious, but I don't know. I'll let you guys decide. But it's pretty obvious that this is satiric. This is Whitman in his satiric political voice. We talk about Whitman in the 5 Ps, one of those being the political Whitman, and we're certainly going to see it here. Now, I just want to remind you that in one of those early poems of inscriptions to the O Cause, that Whitman said, "My book and the war are one." This is one of the places in Drum Taps where we're able to kind of get a sense of why he said what he said. Now, our assumptions are that you're following our stuff at learnstrong.net. My hope is that you have your own deathbed edition of Leaves of Grass. You're annotating as you go. We've worked everything from the very first word come all the way up through and including an introductory set of comments to Drum Taps, and then we just finished with Rise O Days. Now, our Nortons will give us some insight, especially into the satiric voice. This satire, Norton says, on Virginia's secession from the democracy which she helped to create, as compared to the loyalty of the Americans from the New West, was not one of the Civil War poems of Drum Taps in 1865. It was not added to that section until 1881. It is perhaps more closely related to the title poem of the volume in which it first appeared in 1872 as A Strong Bird on Pinions Free, later called Thou Mother with the Equal Brood in Leaves of Grass, 1881. This poem celebrated a varied chain of different states, yet one identity only. Virginia the West was first printed in the March 1872 issue of the Kansas Magazine. Now, the allegiance to Washington as the great president and the great leader is for Whitman non-negotiable, and so we're going to come back to it at the conclusion of this poem. Virginia the West. The noble sire fallen on evil days, I saw with hand uplifted, menacing, brandishing, memories of old in abeyance, love and faith in abeyance, the insane knife toward the mother of all. The noble son on sinewy feet advancing, I saw out of the land of prairies, land of Ohio's waters and of Indiana. To the rescue, the stalwart giant hurry his plenteous offspring dressed in blue, bearing their trusty rifles on their shoulders. Then the mother of all with calm voice speaking, as to you, rebellious, I seem to hear her say, why strive against me, and why seek my life when you yourself forever provide to defend me? For you provided me, Washington, and now these also. Now, it's a compelling little poem, and this is one of the reasons why I argue that you have to read all of Leaves of Grass and not just, of course, those marquee poems of Leaves of Grass. Notice we'll begin with the use of the word noble, and it will be noble sire. Later it will be noble son. Fallen on evil days, and this idea, of course, of fallen on evil days makes sense. By the way, you'll maybe remember the word noble is very early on used in Leaves of Grass about aboard a ship's helm is going to be used there. Virginia is going to be mentioned often in Leaves of Grass, 4 times mentioned in Drum Taps. And then he'll say it, I saw with hand uplifted, menacing, brandishing, and then in parenthetics, memories of old in abeyance, love and faith in abeyance, the insane knife. So it's like that parenthetic comes right in the middle between brandishing the insane knife toward the mother of all. Now, obviously, we're playing with the whole notion of Agamemnon's son knifing his own, killing his own mother, Clytemnestra, of course, the Oresteia trilogy. We've given full lectures on it at learnstrong.net. This is not so obvious to readers today, and so I pointed out to you. But in Whitman's day, this was absolutely where all readers would go because they all kind of knew the Oresteia, and they understood what was going on there. Notice it's I saw with hand uplifted, menacing, brandishing. He loves these trinities, right? And then in parenthetics, memories of old in abeyance, which will take us to creeds and schools in abeyance, of course, from Song of Myself 1. Memories of old in abeyance, love and faith in abeyance. In other words, the argument that Whitman's going to make is that Virginia has forgotten its first love. Now, of course, this would be a poem that would sting Lee, probably General Lee, probably more than any other type of poem. In other words, what are you thinking? And then notice the insane knife. By the way, insane only use in all of drum taps takes us back to Song Myself 43. You'll maybe remember the use of that word there. Knife toward the mother of all. Notice capitalized mother and all. We said what already is obvious about the importance of the word all. Notice capitalized here. By the way, over the carnage rose, we see this mother of all, and Prophet in Voices, poem number 25 of drum taps. We're going to see this again. And then we're back to it. The noble son. Obviously, we're back again to playing the game with Oresteia. The noble son on sinewy feet advancing. By the way, you'll remember this noble son when we get to Blue Ontario Shore number 6. And sinewy, from our earlier poem, 1861. It's the only other use in drum taps. And then I saw, so it's Whitman as observer. We saw this again and again in Roadside. Now here it is. I saw out of the land of prairies, land of Ohio's waters, and of Indiana, to the rescue. Notice the inversion here syntactically. The stalwart as opposed to the kind of failing or dainty. The stalwart giant hurry his plenteous offspring. So he's kind of imagining all of these Union troops coming now. Dressed in blue, obviously taking us back to the poem 1861 with sinewy limbs, clothed in blue, right? Dressed in blue, bearing their trusty rifles on their shoulders. They'll use trusty here, obviously, as opposed to betrayal. Then, we're back to it. The mother of all with, notice it's a calm voice speaking. There is a sense that Whitman was always enamored of Lincoln because of his ability to kind of calm everything down. And so here it's a calm voice speaking. And then notice, as to you, capitalized, rebellious, I seem to hear her say, why strive against me and why seek my life? Now, I think this is the central question of drum taps. I do. I have called Leaves of Grass a sustained theodicy. Why is it bad things have to happen? No longer ask, why is this happening to me, but rather, why is this happening for me? I think that's foundational to reading Leaves of Grass. It is always the case, it seems to me, in the history of warfare, that when nations decide to go to war, and in this case against themselves, the fundamental question is why? Notice it's asked here twice, right? Why strive against me? Why seek my life? And then to finish, when you yourself provide to defend me? Question mark. Right? In other words, it's this rhetorical question, brutal satire here, right? In other words, why in heaven's name would the very sons of the mother ever commit matricide? It's insane. It makes absolutely no sense. We know this, of course, from our stories of ancient antiquity, and obviously we know this now here, he says. And then he gives the final argument, which is kind of the knockdown argument. He brings Washington into it, obviously a product of Virginia. For you provided me Washington. We'll see this later in the centenarian story, this use of Washington. And notice again the dash. And now these also. In other words, the savior of the Union was going to come from Virginia in the same way that Washington saved the Union before. Again, as we say, this is going to be a stinging bit of satire for those Confederate soldiers who would read Leaves of Grass and read this kind of a poem. At 2A, what are we going to take away as themes and messages? I think that it's clear, and this is why I say we have to read Leaves of Grass and Drum Taps, I think, during times of political upheaval, to remind ourselves, because again, this phrase Civil War gets thrown around. It's being thrown around, obviously, even now today. And I think Whitman would say, whoa, 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 you might want to think long and hard before you throw a phrase like that around. And of course, when it happens, and when war finally does come, the only question really is ever why. That's in the end always going to be, by people like Whitman, obviously, why. At 2B, we've mentioned this is satire, which takes us to 3, and I just want to point out that, well, I think Whitman was very influenced by Swift. Obviously, he was influenced by those earlier Greek thinkers and the Roman satirists of Horace and Juvenal. But I think Swift is as well very influential for him. Obviously, Gulliver's Travels and Modest Proposal. We've given full lectures at learnstrong.net on that great satirist. And then finally at 3B, as we're always want to do, to try and own even a simple little poem like this. How about this one? When was a time that your country fell on evil days? And when was a time that you yourself felt like you had fallen on evil days? And finally, what is your view of satire? Do you feel that this kind of a thing is more forceful because of the irony that will be laced with a poem like this? I hope that this kind of question is challenging you to consider, to think about even the events that are happening now. Thank you.